Right across the TCR world, it's crunch time. In November, TCR titles have been awarded in WTCR, TCR Europe, TCR Germany and the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, while in other series like TCR Japan and TCR Italy, the battle is very much still on. Welcome to episode 19 of Inside the World of TCR, our 5th of 2020. WTCR was at Motorland Aragon in Spain for the penultimate meeting of the season. In the first race, Jean-Carl Venet made a perfect start in his Alfa Romeo Giulietta and took the lead, while pole sitter Norbert Mikelic was trying to keep Gilles Magnus at bay and so left the door open for Venet, who grabbed the opportunity on the outside line and began to pull away. At the end of lap 1, Santiago Urrutia moved into P2 ahead of Magnus, and he was able to keep the position until the finish. Championship leaders Jan Erlechet and Esteban Gurrieri, starting from 20th and 16th respectively, started fighting from the very first lap. Erlechet, though, had to wait until the 6th lap to overtake Gurrieri for 11th. The Argentine then lost another 2 places as he was passed by Tom Coronel and Nathaniel Berton, although he eventually finished 13th when Coronel stopped with a technical issue. Up front, Venet managed to keep Urrutia at a safe distance and won the race by over 8/10, his first win for Alfa Romeo. Gilles Magnus completed the podium in 3rd place. The victory propelled Venet to 3rd in the standings, 38 points behind Erlechet, with 2nd place Gurrieri 24 points from the leader. In the second race, Michael Azcona had a perfect start, as did Ivan Muller, while Luca Engstler, starting from the 2nd spot, dropped back to P7. Amongst the best starters was Gabriele Tarquini, who found a gap to go into turn 1 in 3rd position. At the end of the first lap, race 1 winner Jean-Carl Venet slowed, and the French driver returned to the pits. Tom Coronel, who was fighting with the Honda cars of Gurrieri and Nesta Girolami, also had to pit with technical problems, stopping his Audi in a cloud of smoke. Azcona continued to lead with a comfortable margin and took the checkered flag 3 seconds ahead of Ivan Muller, with Urrutia, Berton, Tarquini and Engstler filling the positions between 3rd and 6th. In the Mini Parc Fermé, it was fiesta time. In race 3, Ted Bjerg took the lead from 2nd on the grid with a lightning start, ahead of pole sitter Magnus and Urrutia. The Belgian youngster found himself sandwiched between the 2 Lynk & Co cars, trying to attack Bjerg and defend from Urrutia at the same time. The safety car was deployed on lap 1 to recover the stricken Honda of Nesta Girolami that had been T-boned by Luca Engstler's Hyundai. Magnus was hunting Bjerg for the lead, but he had to watch his mirrors because Urrutia was very aggressive behind him. Halfway through the race, the Uruguayan overtook Magnus and closed the gap on his teammate Bjerg. On lap 11, with a brilliant move, Gabriele Tarquini overtook Magnus, who was then also passed by Berton and so dropped to 5th. So Ted Bjerg led home a Lynk & Co 1-2, with his young teammate Santiago Urrutia in 2nd position to claim his 3rd podium result of the day. Erlechet finished 12th, but lost only 2 points to Gurrieri in the drivers' standings, while Venet retook 3rd position on equal points with Muller. Following the cancellation of the event in Adria, WTCR remained in Aragon for the season finale. In the first race, Honda drivers Esteban Gurrieri and Nesta Girolami made a risky tyre choice on a track that was still damp but beginning to dry. The 2 Argentinians went for slicks on the front and wets on the rear, while their rivals opted for full sets of slicks. Girolami started from P11, but took the lead during the first lap. On lap 2, Gurrieri, after starting from P16 and battling for the championship, overtook Azcona for 3rd. On the same lap, a couple of corners later, Gilles Magnus elbowed his way up the field and passed Azcona for 4th. 1 lap later, Gurrieri passed Nathaniel Berton for 2nd with this clean move. The tyre choice taken by the Munich Motorsport team proved to be a winning one. There were several close battles amongst the midfielders. Luca Filippi and Ted Bjerg collided on lap 4 while they were fighting for P10. On lap 6, Gilles Magnus passed Nathaniel Berton for 3rd. Towards the end of the race, Thiago Monteiro went off while trying to pass Ivan Muller for P7 and lost a front tyre. During the final lap, it was time for team orders. Girolami waited for Guerrieri and opened the door for him to take the win in order to score precious points in the drivers' standings. Magnus was third ahead of Berton, Azcona and Ehrliche, who completed a cautious race. For Munich Motorsport, this was a superb 1-2, and an added bonus to have Guerrieri reduce his gap from championship leader Ehrliche to 16 points. In the second race, Ivan Muller made a perfect getaway from pole position and led from Norbert Michelisz, Gilles Magnus and Jean-Carl Vernet. Guerrieri's hopes vanished during the opening lap when he was involved in a series of nose-to-tail crashes in the middle of the field, hit Bench Boldich's car and retired. As you can see from Guerrieri's onboard camera, there really wasn't much room left for the Argentinian. With Guerrieri unable to score, Ehrliche drove cautiously in the 6th position that enabled him to grab the title. The race was disrupted by the safety car on laps 9 and 10 after the engine of Nestor Girolami's car sprayed oil on the track. Muller won the race in front of Vernet and Azcona, who passed Magnus on the last lap. But all the attention was on Muller's nephew Jan Ehrliche, who by finishing 6th scored enough points to secure the 2020 WTCR title with one race in hand. Huge joy for the 24-year-old Frenchman at the end of the race.
I don't feel anything anymore now. It's absolutely insane. As I say always, it's just a dream coming through. I start racing really late, and that was definitely the goal since I'm young. I remember when I was a child going into the city when Ivan got all this title, and now it's me. I'm super proud and super happy.
At the start of the third race, Santiago Urrutia and Jan Ehrliche led the field into turn 1, with Nathaniel Berton in 3rd position. Starting from 10th on the grid, Ivan Muller was already up to 7th on the opening lap after he passed Gilles Magnus. 2 laps into the race, and this was when Jean-Carl Vernet overtook Berton for 3rd. On lap 5, while battling for 4th, Azcona and Björk seemed to forget that not far away was a certain Ivan Muller. In just one corner, the Frenchman passed them both with this very simple manoeuvre, while the Spaniard managed to pass the Swede. Esteban Guerrieri, trying to score points in order to save his 2nd position in the standings, didn't respect track limits on several occasions. After a black and white flag, he'd also be given a 30-second penalty after the race, which would drop him out of the points and off the podium in the final championship ranking. For Lynk & Co., the first Chinese manufacturer to win an FIA title, the icing on the cake was Urrutia claiming his maiden victory in WTCR. Freshly crowned champion Jan Ehrliche finished the season in style with 2nd place. Thanks to his 4th place, Jan's uncle Ivan Muller climbed to 2nd in the championship standings, while Jean-Carl Vernet finished the race 3rd, scoring enough points to also finish 3rd in the drivers' standings. TCR Europe went to Spa for its penultimate event of the season. In the first race, Mehdi Benani sprinted from pole, while John Filippi and Tom Coronel negotiated the La Source hairpins side by side. After a thrilling high-speed downhill run, Coronel moved ahead into P2 at Eau Rouge. During the first lap, Nicolas Bart's Audi and Jessica Beckman's Hyundai tangled and crashed at the chicane. The incident prompted the safety car into action. But seconds before the SC panels were shown, Coronel grabbed the lead from Benani and Mikel Azcona passed Dan Lloyd for P6. When the race resumed, Benani's pace faded and he began to lose positions. Filippi, Mike Halder, Azcona and Andreas Beckman were all able to pass the Audi that dropped to 6th. 2018 TCR Europe winner Mikel Azcona had made a risky bet on the tyre choice, with slicks at the front and wets at the rear. The young Spaniard was recovering from starting 13th on the grid lap by lap. This was when he took 2nd from Filippi. And on the penultimate lap, passed Coronel, took the lead and pulled away. Azcona then won in front of Coronel, while Mike Halder, finishing 3rd, scored some very precious points in the drivers' standings, stretching his lead over Benani to 15 points and over Lloyd to 37. Andreas Beckman was 4th in front of Filippi. In the second race, a light rain began to fall as the cars left for the warm-up lap, and at the start, Pepe Oriola was faster than pole sitter Matto Homola and took the lead, while Martin Rieber was hit at La Source and crashed into the wall. 3 laps into the race, and there was a very tight battle for third between Dan Lloyd and Jose Manuel Sapag. Bumper to bumper, door to door, and unfortunately the barrier lay in wait for both of them. For former championship leader Dan Lloyd, a crucial DNF. After a safety car intervention, the race resumed on lap 7, and Azcona immediately overtook Mike Halder for second. On the same lap, the Spaniard also passed his compatriot Pepe Oriola for the lead. While Azcona pulled away, there was chaos behind, with 7 cars battling for 6th on lap 8. It was a great show to watch, but tough for the drivers, especially for Julien Brichet and Jimmy Claret, who collided and retired. On the last lap, Coronel touched John Philippi from behind into this corner, and immediately after the Dutchman passed the French driver. The manoeuvre was declared legal, to Coronel's relief. And so, it was 2 out of 2 for Azcona, who repeated the perfect race he'd enjoyed the day before. Coronel was again second, while Philippi, by finishing third, moved up to third in the drivers' standings, reducing his gap from Halder to 35 points. The TCR Europe season finale then took place in Jarama. In the first race, on a damp track, Azcona made good use of pole to lead from Teddy Claret, Matto Homola and Mehdi Binani. On the first lap, Jessica Beckman lost control, headed across the grass and T-boned Pepe Oriola's car. The safety car was deployed while both cars were recovered. Racing resumed on lap 7, but 2 laps later the safety car was back on track after Mike Halder outbraked himself at turn 1 and collected Franco Girolami. That was the end of the race for both Honda drivers, and Halder's hopes of the title were heavily compromised. The race restarted with 5 laps to go. Azcona controlled the situation, and the positions behind him didn't change, with Teddy Claret and Homola completing the podium ahead of Binani, Brichet and Andreas Beckman. In the second race, Philippi sprinted from pole to take the lead from Danny Nage, Binani, Andreas Beckman, Brichet, Nicolas Bart, Azcona and Teddy Claret. Philippi took full advantage from the battles behind and built a gap. The fight for P2 then became fierce, with Nage chased by Binani, Beckman, Brichet and Azcona. On lap 4, Azcona and Brichet made contact and the Spaniard moved into P5. Halder came to Jarama as championship leader, but his hopes completely vanished when he crashed again in race 2. After the safety car was deployed, racing resumed on lap 8 and Brichet passed Azcona to reclaim P5. Brichet showed an impressive pace with his typically aggressive driving style and advanced more places up the standings when he passed Binani for P3 on lap 11 and Nage for P2 on lap 12, with this move at the exit of the first corner. But the Frenchman was overdriving, and a few corners later on the same lap, he slightly lost control of his Peugeot 308 and was passed by Mehdi Binani. On lap 15, Nage crashed into the barriers and the safety car was back on track. The race resumed for the final 2 laps. Philippi and Binani finished first and second, with Brichet managing to keep Azcona at bay for third position. For Come To You Racing, it was time to celebrate. After winning the team's trophy, they'd now also secured the driver's title. John Philippi won the race, but all the attention was on the man who finished second to become 2020 TCR Europe champion. Without winning a single race, but with a consistent pace throughout the season, Mehdi Binani managed to take the title. John Philippi was second and Nicolas Bart third. TCR Germany returned to the Lausitz ring for the second time in the season for rounds 11 and 12. At the start of the first race on a wet track, Harold Procek nearly stalled from pole and was swallowed up by the pack. Antiburi took the lead, resisting an attempt at overtaking from Dominic Fugel, who'd sprinted from P5 on the grid. After dropping to 8th, championship contender Harold Procek refused to panic and began to recover lap by lap. The Austrian driver passed René Kircher, Nico Gruber and Dominic Fugel, and on lap 6 he overtook Albert Legutko for second with this move. Further behind, Dominic Fugel passed Zugas Tovalavicius for P7 on lap 10, and immediately afterwards Tovalavicius collided with Marcel Fugel. In the contact, the front suspension of Fugel's Honda collapsed and he retired into the pits. The fight for P6 between Dominic Fugel and Jan Seifert was decided by a mistake from Fugel, who went straight at the end of lap 14, rejoined after cutting the track, and was then penalised by 30 seconds, which dropped him to 9th. So this was the way Antti Buri dominated the race. For the Finn, it was his 3rd win of the season, ahead of Procek and Legutko. Gruber and Kircher finished 4th and 5th, ahead of guest lady driver Laura Kreihammer. The second race started in pouring rain, with Albert Legutko sprinting from P2 and leading the field into turn 1, followed by Dominic and Marcel Fugel, while Laura Kreihammer, who'd sat on pole, made a poor start and dropped back. During the opening lap, Dominic Fugel snatched the lead from Legutko, while Buri, who was 7th on the grid, passed Nico Gruber for P4. The next driver in the way for Buri and Procek was Marcel Fugel, who they both managed to overtake on lap 4. Marcel Fugel's Honda was unbalanced after making contact with Procek's Hyundai, and so the younger Fugel lost 2 more places to Gruber and Jan Seifert. On lap 6, Buri overtook Legutko for 2nd, and 1 lap later the young Polish driver had to concede P3 to Procek. Dominic Fugel claimed a dominant victory in front of Buri and Procek, sending the title fight down to the wire, with only 18 points separating the 3 and still 53 at stake at the season finale. And that season finale took place in Oschersleben over the 2nd weekend of November. Antti Buri made the perfect start from pole position in race 1, in contrast to Harold Procek, who'd led the standings going into the race. The Austrian made a slow getaway from 4th on the grid in his Hyundai and fell behind the fast-starting Volkswagen of Zugast Tovilevicius and the Honda of Marcel Fugel. Buri led the way from guest driver Tiago Monteiro and Dominic Fugel. It was a fairly processional race, with the top 3 drivers never getting close enough to attack each other, leaving all the action for the battle for 4th. But even then, Marcel Fugel and Procek were never really able to make a realistic attempt to pass the Lithuanian ahead of them. Buri went on to win the race, 1.8 seconds clear of Monteiro, who, as a guest driver, didn't score points. So Dominic Fugel picked up 18 points despite finishing 3rd on the road. Buri now took the championship lead on 233 points, 7 clear of Procek and 15 ahead of Dominic Fugel, with all 3 still able to win the championship in the final race of the season. René Kircher started from pole on the reversed grid ahead of Marcel Fugel and Tovilevicius, but Marcel Fugel was quickly able to get ahead of Kircher. All the drama was behind him, as Procek had a slow getaway from 5th on the grid, and the 2 Hondas of Monteiro and Dominic Fugel nearly came together as they squeezed into the gap, with Monteiro moving across the nose of Procek to avoid Fugel, spinning himself into the barrier and out of the race, with the safety car called out on lap 1. Points leader Buri also had a terrible start, running wide at turn 1 as he tried to pass Seifert and dropped to the back of the pack. When the race restarted on lap 4, Dominic Fugel quickly passed Kircher's Volkswagen for 2nd and was then let past by his brother and teammate Marcel for the lead, while it became a waiting game to see if Procek and Buri could work their way back up the order and back ahead in the points. Kircher was passed by guest driver Luca Enschler on lap 7. Enschler then closed in on Marcel Fugel, while Procek and Buri picked their way through the field to be running behind the Fugel-Enschler battle. On lap 12, Enschler dived down the inside of Marcel Fugel's Honda at the final corner, with the 2 drivers making contact. Enschler's car was damaged in the melee, while both Procek and Buri were through and into the final podium positions. Dominic Fugel took his 4th win of the season, but it wasn't enough to take the title. With Procek finishing 2nd and Buri 3rd, it was the Finn who kept his points lead and so took the crown. Buri finished the year on 249 points, 3 clear of 2018 champion Procek, with Fugel 6 points behind at the end of a 14-race season. TCR Italy went to the Temple of Speed, Monza, for its 5th meeting of the season. In race 1, pole-sitter Eric Brigliadori was beaten to turn 1 by Jacopo Guidetti, whose Honda had started the race alongside the Audi on the front row of the grid. Several contacts at the first chicane, and it was the end of the race for Ettore Carminati, Simone Pellegrini and Michele Imberti, with the safety car deployed. Just before the safety car came out, Marco Pellegrini went off into the barriers at the Ascari chicane, but was also able to limp back to the pits. When racing resumed on lap 4, 3 cars ran side by side down to the first chicane, with Jonathan Giacon emerging as the new race leader. Alessandro Giardelli half spun at the chicane after a contact with Damiano Reduzzi, but continued, while Guidetti dropped to 5th place. There was worse to come for the former race leader, as contact with Tavano coming out of the Curva Grande saw the Honda impact the barriers heavily. Racing resumed again on lap 7, with a little over 8 minutes of the 25-minute race remaining. Reduzzi passed Tavano for 5th at the exit to the second Lesmo corner, but then he ran wide at the Parabolica and dropped 2 places. On the penultimate lap, there was this contact between Brigliadori and Stefanovski in the first chicane. This was how returnee Jonathan Giacon took victory, finishing just 36 hundredths of a second ahead of Felice Jelmini, while Salvatore Tavano crossed the line in 3rd place. With this result, Tavano moved ahead of Brigliadori in the standings with a 2-point advantage. At the start of the second race, pole sitter Marco Pellegrini took the lead from Salvatore Tavano, Jonathan Giacon, Alessandro Giardelli and Ronnie Valori, but the first lap saw plenty of incidents. Igor Stefanovski's Hyundai ran wide at the first chicane. Jelmini's Hyundai and Simone Pellegrini's Cupra then came together, and the latter ended in the barriers and retired. Matteo Poloni's Audi was then sent into a spin by Michele Imberti's Cupra and collected the other Cupra of Nicola Guida. After a quick safety car intervention, the race restarted on lap 3. Pellegrini outbraked himself at the first chicane, losing the lead to Tavano. Then, race 1 winner Jonathan Giacon, who'd started 5th, passed Pellegrini and finally Tavano with this move into the Variante Ascari. The battle for 4th between Pellegrini and Valori ended with this contact in the first chicane. Valori spun and collected the innocent Stefanovski, who was running 8th. Another contact happened at the Variante Ascari between Jelmini and Reduzzi, who were also battling for 4th. Neither driver would finish. In the final part of the race, Brigliadori snatched 2nd from Tavano, but time was running out, and despite his efforts, the Audi driver couldn't quite catch up with Giacon, who claimed his 2nd consecutive victory at the wheel of the Motorsport Honda Civic from Brigliadori, Tavano and Francesca Raffaele, who scored her best result in the championship on her first weekend at the wheel of a target competition Hyundai. In the championship standings, Brigliadori retook the lead, 2 points clear of Salvatore Tavano. With the other title contenders, Marco Pellegrini and Felice Jelmini, forced to retire, Brigliadori and Tavano now have the title in their hands. It'll all be decided in Imola over the 4th weekend of November. The 4th meeting of TCR Japan took place at Autopolis. At the start of the first race, Shinohara made good use of pole position to take the lead from Hirobon. On lap 5, Shimono went wide and opened the door for Shioya, who took 4th. Mototino passed Oyama on lap 10, moving into P10, which then became P9 when Suzuki spun during the last lap. For Shinohara, it was another dominant win, the 4th victory from the 4 races of the Saturday series held so far. Hirobon tried to chase the leader, but his Cupra lost ground lap after lap and he had to settle for 2nd. Matsumoto was 3rd. The Sunday race then looked set to have the same script as Saturday's race, with Shinohara pulling away and increasing his leading margin by a 2nd a lap over Hirobon. But suddenly, at the end of lap 8, Shinohara slowed with a technical issue, and Hirobon passed him for the lead at the beginning of lap 9. On the same lap, Shinohara dropped to 5th and then retired into the pits. Hirobon took the win in front of Matsumoto, Shioya, Shimono, Okura and Takeda. TCR Japan will resume in Suzuka on December the 5th and 6th. In the penultimate round of the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge at Laguna Seca, Gabi Chavez passed Jonathan Morley in the waning minutes and went on to win the TCR class and finish 15th overall, taking over the lead in the TCR driver standings with teammate Ryan Norman. Norman had avoided the worst of a collision involving 3 of the Brian Herter Autosport Hyundai Veloster cars on the opening lap. Norman then got the team's number 33 car close to the front before giving way to Chavez, who passed Morley's Audi in the track's famous corkscrew turn and pulled away to record victory by a little under 10 seconds. For Chavez and Norman, it was their 3rd win of the season. In 2nd place was the Road Shagger Racing Audi RS3 LMS that Morley shared with Gavin Ernston, and 3rd was the number 29 Brian Herter Autosport Hyundai driven by Parker Chase and Spencer Brockman. Chavez and Norman took the lead in the drivers' standings by a small margin. The season finale would turn out to be decisive for all the top spots. And it was Sebring which hosted that season finale. The first part of the race saw the KMW Motorsports Alfa Romeo Giulietta of Roy Block leading the pack, chased by the Road Shagger Racing Audi RS3 LMS of Gavin Ernston. However, at halfway, an intense duel between teammates Mark Wilkins and Gabi Chavez in two of the Brian Herter Autosport run Hyundai Veloster N cars thrilled the spectators. The two were able to pull away. Eventually, Wilkins, who was sharing the car with Harry Gottsacker in the 2-hour race, crossed the finishing line only 2/10 ahead of Chavez, who won the title in the TCR class together with his teammate Ryan Norman. Wilkins and Gottsacker finished second, and Michael Lewis and Mason Philippi third, completing an all Brian Herter Autosport Hyundai podium. It was the perfect end to a triumphant season for the team that won 7 of the 10 rounds. That then was Inside the World of TCR episode 19, our 5th of 2020. We'll be back before the end of the year with the final races of the season, but for now, it's goodbye.